really don't need my iPad. I just have a couple, literally like 15 words here to talk about this. After countless years of study into the nature of magnetism, and specifically the secrets of magnetism, and they're only secrets because people don't really have penetrative minds, and only by standing on the shoulders of giants, as the phrase goes, I've been able to see much, much further. Also, too, without the hindrance of wife and kids, and concentrating myself very deeply and having this nonlinear mind, and into thinking about things and understanding abstruse topics of both metaphysics, ontology, and specifically field theory. I've been able to figure this out over countless years, that obviously so there's not two sides of the universe. We actually don't have physics here versus metaphysics. I mean, they're both flip sides of the exact same coin. No one would ignorantly think that this head versus this tail are two different things. They're both made out of the coinage of the silver that comprises both. They're both one and the same thing. Getting specifically to the conjugate nature of the universe, absolutely fascinating throughout every branch of intelligent metaphysics, throughout all of history, both ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Indian. And those are really the only three intelligent sources of monistic metaphysics that have ever existed throughout human history, that is at least recorded. All of this is so sublimely tied together in such beautiful, beatific simplicity. It's absolutely mind-blowing at times. When I finally realized, and of course magnetism is a dielectric field, human beings, of course, depending on their intelligence, would think that the universe or the world is dualistic in nature, like light and dark, and of course there's no distinction between light and dark. Dark is not the opposite of light, it's the absence of light. There is not a duality within the universe, only a misapprehension by inferior intellects, specifically human beings, as to the nature of the universe. People think, well, yin and yang, and I think dielectric and magnetic, principle and attribute are not two different things. There's no distinction between light and illumination. Obviously so. The most simplex of things, the absolute, in reference to thereof, or the good, as the early Christian mystics would call it. What the good is also what the good does. The distinction is only in principle and attribute. The most simplex things in the universe obviously has attribute. Speaking about the extrinsic attribute of the absolute, the ancient Greeks referred to that as the euristos dias. This is the reason why I spent so much time translating all occurrences of euristos dias. This, unfortunately, is translated as the indefinite dyad, but what it means is specifically the extrinsic attribute of the absolute. We could also speak in reference to the ancient Greek word for ananke. There is no translation thereof. It's translated as necessity, but what it means is the extrinsic attribute of the absolute. Also, too, the ancient Greek term tolma. Also, too, untranslatable, just like the term logos. Not really one thing that can translate it, but specifically getting to the heart of this video is this principle of this conjugate geometry of the universe that is not two things, rather one thing. Specifically as regarding all variants of field theory, there is fundamentally only one thing. Counter space, the dielectric, its extrinsic attribute, of course, would be the euristos dias, or why anything would come to be manifest. Or, of course, in monism or non-dualism, or the ancient Indians would call it Advaita Vedanta, there is not something separate from the absolute, only the extrinsic attribute of the absolute, but getting specifically to everything being mirroring of everything else, there is only principle and attribute. Specifically regarding field theory, the dielectric and the magnetic. Magnetism is, of course, the dielectric field. The loss of that inertia manifests as a Poincare disk model of projective geometry. If you want to Google search that, go ahead, look into it. Poincare disk model. The person that wrote about that was Henri Poincare. By the way, Poincare was the person that Einstein stole most of his original content from. There are many books about this fact, by the way. Specifically getting on point that dualism is an inappropriate view of the universe, and seeing attribute as something separate or opposite to that of the absolute, and that's not the case. Magnetism is not something different than dielectricity. There is no field phenomena that is autonomous that we call gravity. It doesn't exist. The phenomena of gravity is merely mutual mass acceleration, non-point source mutual mass acceleration, which is the exact same thing we call magnetic attraction, which does not exist at all. Magnetism, by definition, is force in motion. It is centrifugal divergence. It is literally that which creates space. Space and counter space are not two opposite things. They're literally different sides of the same silver that makes up the coinage of the universe. This is not a head and this is not a tail as two autonomous things that are one as opposed to the other or as diametrically opposed to one another. They are both the silver of the coinage. Absolutely at every level, through every branch of ancient metaphysics and the most intelligent stuff ever written by the wisest minds who ever lived, and by God, I got all of that shit. Plotinus, Numenius, Nemesius, Proclus, Syrianus, Plato, Pythagoras, Anandakitish Kumaraswamy, Sri Sankaracharya, the writings of the Upadisa Sahasra and the Vivachudamuni of Advaita Vedanta, the Greek Platonists and Neoplatonists, and of course the Pythagoreans, they all succinctly said that these are not two different things. They are one and the same thing seen from different attributes. Play of words there, different attributes, specifically principle and attribute. There is not spirit and matter. There is a mixing of these two. I'm trying to get to the heart of the matter, and it's really impossible to convey how divinely beautiful, ultimately seeing in your head. Sometimes, like when I'm walking, like it was the other day, I think about these things all the time, but sometimes they overpower you in a good way, and you literally stop in your tracks, and you just see how incredibly simplex and beautiful it really is. The hyperboloid and the torus. The negative image of a torus or a donut shape is the hyperboloid or hourglass shape. Negative image of the hyperboloid is the torus. These are not two different things. They're literally the yin and yang, the light and illumination. They literally make up the conjugate principles of the universe: force and motion, inertia and acceleration. Mother Nature doesn't have a calculator. Everything in nature works off of pressure mediation. Specifically, the one thing we refer to in like the golden section, people love to talk about the golden ratio, the golden section, but it's proportional to itself. This is the reason why the first two numbers in the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1. 1 and 1, of course, are principle and attribute. In the Greeks, it would be monas, nous, mind, matter, and of course, an extension, magnitude, matter, and the mixing of those two things, the nous and matter, as being or ontos. This dualistic principle is not dual at all. It is merely looking at the principle as itself and then the attribute as itself, but they're of course just one and exactly the same thing. It's absolutely amazing if you could actually see in your head, just for a millisecond, the fundamental field that makes up the entire universe. This is people say, why are you so interested in studying magnetism for so many years? Because 100% of the visible universe is due to magnetism and magnetism only. There's not a single branch of science that ever defined the term energy or defined the term field. Nor do they ever define, what magnetism is. There's not a single book. Sure there is, No, there's not. I dare you to go find it. There's not a single definition of the term field or energy, nor an explanation of what magnetism is. There are many, many countless descriptions, and of course the four Maxwellian field equations never define what a field is, nor do they define what magnetism is. They define interactions over a vector or the period of time with a given result, joules, watts, volts, amps, yada yada. That doesn't define what magnetism is. Descriptions are the playthings of slightly more intelligent children or fools. Explanations are the things of the wise. There are three groups of people in this world with various gray zones in between: fools, intelligent people, and the wise. The fools don't know anything. The intelligent people can give you an accurate description of something along with an equation to predict, you know, how it will interact, so on and so forth. And the wise will tell you exactly what the hell is going on, how it works, why it works, why it works. Intelligent people can't do that. Empirical knowledge is not wisdom. There's a huge difference between those two. This conjugate model of the universe at its most fundamental level, you know, as expressed by the Chinese and the yin and the yang, Greeks had their own, the Indians had their own. The universe is not dual. Just as death is not the opposite of life, death is like a shadow. Death is the absence of life. Life, or Zoe, is a consubstantial manifestation of spirit and matter, making life. Same thing is true of a radio. People say, what happens at death? I tell people, so what the hell happens to the radio signal if you smash the radio? The answer is nothing happens. All monistic metaphysics, by the way, are identification phenomenology. All suffering stems from false identity, or as the Indians would say, seeing self, i.e. the soul, in what is not the self. Or in the Pali, anatta. Or in Sanskrit, anatman. This dualistic thinking is superficial. It's unintelligent. I wished I was actually able to better, convey this. I wish people could hold hands for 5 seconds and do non-verbal transference of wisdom. Man, the world would be so great if that could happen. You could literally help someone, not by telling them, because telling doesn't convey comprehension. You could tell someone they can have perfect recollection of what you said, but unless they have comprehension, which requires both intelligence and wisdom, then they don't have it. I remember what he said. Do you understand it? No, I don't, but I remember everything he said. Perfect example. Comprehension can't be taught. Teaching people has nothing to do with comprehension. People aren't even taught at all anymore. What they are is they fill their mind with a lot of irrelevant nonsense and given multiple guess tests, and if you do enough multiple guess tests, they'll give you a PhD, and then you can get dumb people to believe you're actually smart when, of course, you're still an effing idiot. This is, of course, the reason why doctors, real doctors, are the second leading cause of death. I'm a doctor. I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. You're just an asshole with a piece of paper hanging on the wall. You don't really know everything, obviously. Sure, I'm a doctor. I wished I could convey this simply enough. It's really hard. Comprehension is the tough stuff. Comprehension requires that somebody wants it. You could be talking to the most intelligent person on earth, but if they have no interest in it, comprehension is never going to manifest. It's like finding the biggest pile of dry wood, a wood pile, right? If you're going to set fire to it all to give someone comprehension, if they don't want it, it's just like setting fire to wet wood. Now, you got all the wood, but it's wet. It's never going to burn, right? Like we got the burning fireplace here. I wish a lot of this stuff was directly relatable. Fortunately, it's not. You actually have to want comprehension for it to manifest. Oh my God, is that type of metaphysics? Why, yes it is. Yes it is. Thank you so much for watching.